Hi everybody, my name is Kingsley from the Networking Institute. I've been involved with Frankie and Norma since the start of Pendulum 10 years ago. It's been a great run, a great ride. The one lesson I've learned is never, ever, ever follow Jack Kavanagh, because he's a buddy and he's a complete rock star. And we're privileged to have him here today. So the hidden cost of COVID is that our networks have shrunk. We've hunkered down with friends, family, and just a few business connections. The inner concentric ring of our network, where we have strong emotional ties. And we've let slip the outer concentric ring, where we have a wide array of weak ties. But actually, that's where opportunity lies. And so now, as individuals and as companies, we're facing 5 significant challenges. Firstly, there's less business development happening. Secondly, there's less learning on the job, particularly for the next generation coming through. There's less serendipity, luck, chance encounters, which play such a role in our lives. There's less company loyalty, and there's less company culture. So, what do we do about it? Is that a challenge? I think it's an opportunity. I think for those of you who grasp this and realize that to survive and thrive in our challenging, changing times, we need to build strong and diverse networks. But I have to say, when I started out in my career, I hated networking. I thought networking was a kind of a slightly sleazy, slimy activity for people in a bar late at night flicking out business cards. You wake up in the morning and you find Frankie Sheehan's business card and they turn up your trousers. What? Where did that come from? What happened there? I just didn't like it. And then, having lived in these different countries, I lived in 6 countries around the world, I began to realize some facts of life about networking. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's not a kind of a nice to have. Networking is a must have. And we all have 2 types of network. We have an organic network, which just happens. You kind of inherit it. It's friends, family, people on your road, in your street, in your school, and your sports. That's all fine and great. We all have that kind of stuff. But you also have to have, as your career progresses, a second type of network, which is a network which is thoughtful, which is strategic, which is intentional. And you know, you're not born a networker. This is completely a learned skill. And sometimes we mix up networking and sociability. We think the most sociable person is by definition the best networker. And that's not always true. In fact, here's what's interesting. Introverts can be better at networking than extroverts. And why is that? Because they do it with decency and authenticity. They do it with integrity. They ask questions and they listen, which is the #1 skill in networking. And perhaps schools and colleges are to blame, because progress in school or college is a function of a grade, a score, a mark, a metric. It's got nothing to do with the person beside you, and that's how you progress. But then you get into the real world, and it's all to do with a load of things that count but can't be counted. Things like grit and determination, resilience, attitude, empathy, humor, attitude, crack. All those things really matter. They count a lot, but they can't be counted. And they've got a lot to do with the people round about you. So I took the view that my network was a bit like building up air miles, and every so often they kind of come in really, really handy. I take the ATM approach. You know, if you go to the ATM machine and keep taking money out, guess what happens? There's a sign that comes up and says insufficient funds unless you put money back in. And networking is a 2-way process. It's a reciprocal process. So you have to give as much as get when you network. And I'm at the stage in my career where I want to, and I hope many of you, and I'm sure you do, want to pass this on, particularly to the next generation. I want to send the elevator back down. And I think you can look upon your network as a bit like being an orchestra, and you're the conductor of the orchestra. Orchestras are made up of people who are brilliant at strings, at percussion, at wind instruments. And when they all come together, with you as the conductor, it's formidable. So the total is more than the sum of the parts. And that's what it is with your network. If everybody in the orchestra just played the same instrument, it'd be pretty grim. So this diversity of having difference in your network is important. But you have to ask some brutal questions about your network. First of all, is my network good enough for where I want to be in the next few years? The second question is, what do I need to do now to build a strong and diverse network. And thirdly, I have a network, but is it the right one? So there's some process to this. We've broken it down into 4 stages. One is research, and you have to audit your network. And this is an exercise we all have to do. With those 3 questions in mind, you have to look at your network, because not everybody on your network's the same, and you can divide it into 4 categories. At the bottom, it's a bit like that should really be a pyramid. At the bottom is a contact. It's a name on your network, and for the life of you, you can't remember who they were. You must have met them somewhere at a reception, a party, at Frankie's house, or whatever it is. That's pretty weak. But then you have what we call connections. A connection is you know them, they know you. You're not doing anything, but if you call them, they know who you were. It's an element of familiarity. And then you have a relationship. You know each other, you like each other, you're doing business with each other, you trust each other. As Dale Carnegie said, networking is all about finding about people that you know and you like and you trust. And then at the very top, I call it a friend. I don't have many in this category. The friend is, I work with some people who are friends, I have friends who are friends. By definition of this category is somebody you could call on their cell phone on a Sunday afternoon, and I wouldn't do that to many people. It'd be really if I'd had a bit of a personal kind of crisis. The second stage is cultivation. It's taking people on a journey of ignorance of you and your organization to a position of passionate zealotry. Nobody's born loving you or your organization. That's a journey, lots of steps along the way, lots of building of friendships along the way. And then there's that moment of asking. The most powerful marketing tool you have in your armory is asking, and yet so many people duck that. And then the 4th phase is stewardship. It's like after-sales service. How do you ensure that the way you treat people who are doing business with you, that is just the start of a lifetime of involvement? So I'm a fan of a guy called Harvey Coleman, an American writer, and he has an outrageous theory about networking. He said, it's the PIE theory, P-I-E, and P stands for performance. He said, how well you do your job contributes 10% to your career progress. What? Surely it's 90%. And he says, no. He says, doing a great job is mandatory, it's the minimum. He said, it gets you on the pitch, it gets you on the ladder, it doesn't get you up the ladder. He said an interesting thing. He said, you get paid on performance, you get promoted on what other people think of your potential. Now he's introducing those 2 pesky little words, other people. Now he's introducing an element of subjectivity. Now he's basically saying that other people hold the keys to your career progress. So 30%, he said, of career progress is in your network is to do with image. What do people think of you? You know, what are you known for? What's your reputation? Your reputation is what somebody says about you when you're not in the room. What would you be a go-to person for? You know, and then the third piece, which he says is 60% of career progress, is exposure. Who's seen you in action? Who's seen you deliver? Who's seen you speak? Do you do visible work? Do you do invisible work? So this is kind of a crazy theory. And yet I've been using this around the world, and I've had nobody has taken on and said, that doesn't apply. So it's a little bit like the unwritten rules of life and work that are out there. And it turns on its head the old parental advice that I would have got, maybe some of you got, where your parents say to you, work hard, keep your head down, keep out of trouble, and let your good work speak for itself. Problem, work doesn't speak, other people speak. And you've got to remember something. Every major decision about you, your career, your promotion, your compensation, will be taken by a group of people sitting around a table in a room, and you won't be in that room. So here's the other interesting thing. The network you have in the first half of your life is not going to be good enough for what you need in the second half of your life. And early in your career, you get paid for what you do, but later in your career, you get paid for who you are. So now you've got to use your network as a way of becoming known. You've got to think in this world that we're in now that you are managing director, CEO, and marketing director of a company called Me Inc. You are the head of a startup. You have to take responsibility for your own career development. You have to invest in yourself. You have to think about your own personal brand. You know, your personal brand, everybody pays more for a brand than they do for a generic product. So you want to fit in and you want to stand out through your network. And you have to think in terms of what goes into making my personal brand. Then everybody has a personal brand, whether you like it or not. In fact, not having a personal brand is having a personal brand. So that becomes important. And I love the notion of serendipity, the role that luck, chance, and serendipity play in our lives, it has a huge impact on our lives. But some people think that it's just a matter of chance. It just happens. It could be like a bolt of lightning, and it can be. But I actually think serendipity, luck, and chance is more like a gentle wind that's always at your back. And if you grasp it, you can make it work for you. But put it this way, it doesn't happen lying in bed. It doesn't happen sitting at your desk. It happens when you're out and about, when you're doing stuff, when you put your talents on display, when you talk to strangers, when you look for unlike-minded people, when you attend events like this, which is all about meeting people and connecting with people. Serendipity plays an enormous role. And the number one skill, as I intimated earlier, in networking is to be a world-class listener. And most people don't listen. Most people are narcissistic listeners. So if I say to Frankie, I'm thinking of buying a car, he says, I bought one last week. The guy wanted 20,000, I gave him 10,000. It's got a great radio, I love this car. He's taken my topic, he's hijacked it and turned it into his topic, and people do that all the time. So this is a powerful notion, this idea of building networks. And in every meeting with everybody, I want you to remember 3 really simple questions. The first question is, how can I help you? Not the other way around. It's what I can do for you. Because networking is reciprocal, it's 2 ways. Thinking, how can I put my network at your disposal? How can I add value to you using my network? The more you give in life, the more you get. The second great question is, if you were me, what would you do? And here you're paying respect and deference to wisdom and experience. You're listening, that great skill I told you about. And people like giving advice. And then the gold dust question in networking is, who do you know who? Lives in Brisbane, works in aircraft leasing, is involved with tourism. They're the great questions. So they're the takeaways from today, really. That's my name, Kingsley Aikens, the Networking Institute. I was given 8 more seconds to finish this. So I'd say I do remember speaking a lot in America like this and talking about this topic. And an American came to me afterwards and said, he said, I learned tonight, never give a Mick a mic. So my time is up. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the Pendulum.
Keep marching, I said.